They're having an affair. They're not fucking. And I've been to over 1,000 restrooms. I never found a place to rest in any one of them. We call them a restroom. We don't like the word toilet. So there's a lot of things phony about your society. And all your movie actors have to do is smoke a certain kind of cigarette. So Larry King invited me on a show many years ago. And I said to him, Larry, you understand that cigarettes produce cancer, don't you? He said, I heard about it. I said, yes, they do. It takes 10 years, 20 years, sometimes 30 years, but it'll produce a heart condition and cancer. Why do you advertise them on TV? He says, I don't know. I said, because you get a piece of the action. You get interest. The government gets taxation on cigarettes. That's why they sell them. That means they don't give a damn about people. If the government outsources to China, it means they don't care about working people in America. All they care about is profit. What's the bottom line? And if that's the motivation, it's not good. What about war? What is war? War is a racket. They sell machine guns, submarines, aircraft carriers to the nation, to the army. And war doesn't solve problems. When you send an army in, they say, we send the army in to bring democracy to that land. No. They send the army in because they have oil or something we need. Do you understand that? They don't do it to bring democracy. All right, so you get a bunch of lies. Politicians lie continuously, all of them, not some of them. They say things people like to hear. If you don't understand what I'm saying, go to a political meeting. You'll see that the Democrats can't communicate with the Republicans. They don't talk to each other. They talk against each other. They don't share ideas. So I want you to do this. I want you to go up to a politician and say, how can you grow more food to feed people? You say, I don't know. How can you make airplanes safer? I don't know. They don't know anything. Check it out. Don't take my word for it. They know nothing, and they're running for political office. And you vote for them. They're stupid beyond description. They don't even read of what's new in science and technology. So they don't know anything, and you vote for them. So that's why they can't solve the problem. They don't know how. I would say the Democrats and the Republicans don't know how to solve problems. Now, if you want to put a man on the moon, you don't call a Republican. You call a technician. Can you put a man on the moon? Here's what they usually say. We don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You're a scientist. We don't know what a man can stand. Meaning, if you put a man in a gadget and whirl him around at different speeds and see when he conks out, you know that after 9 times gravity, man conks out. That's how they know. If you gave him a glass of water in a spaceship and he drank it, the water would come out of the glass, form bubbles all over the place. It wouldn't work. You have to put the water in a tube and squeeze it into the mouth. Do you understand? That's what they mean by I don't know. To test it. When you put a man out in space, what happens to his bones? He loses calcium. They didn't know that until man was in space for nearly a year. So they have to find out. The one thing I like about science, they don't hold up a metal and say, believe me, this is the strongest metal. They give you its torsion strength, its compression strength, its tension strength. They give you that in the report. And they tell you what's in it. Cobalt, 2 parts iron, 1 part magnesium. They tell you exactly what's in it. So you know what you're dealing with. Artists don't do that. Artists draw, paint, anything they want to paint. They say, it's a night on Bald Mountain. They call it whatever they want. It's a nothing thing. If a man came from Mars and he saw this thing on my wrist, he'd say, what is that gadget on your wrist? I said, well, sir, I can't keep record of time. I'm lousy at it. If I have an appointment at 4 o'clock, this is better than I am at guessing when it's 4 o'clock. That's all I can say. He said, what are those things hanging from your wife's ear? I said, that's a nothing thing. It does nothing. He said, what do you mean by nothing thing? Earrings do nothing. Bracelets do nothing. You wear 25 bracelets because it's a fashion. There are men today that put a silver thing through their tongue and through their nose and through their ears because other kids are doing it of their generation. They want to identify with them. That's a nothing thing. A something thing in the future, earrings will contain little microchips. So if you're in an auto accident, they wheel you in a hospital, all your records come forth with microchips. The earrings become something. Right now they're nothing things. Do you understand what I mean by a nothing thing? If the Afro-Americans see that in Africa they weave the hair of the children and the adults, they might weave their own hair. It might take an hour and a half to weave the hair. That's a nothing thing. It doesn't add anything to the brain of that kid. Do you understand? A nothing thing is anything that doesn't add something to your mind. If you hate Filipinos, that's a nothing thing. You're assuming that Filipinos are bad people. No, they're not. If you hate the Japanese, you don't call them people. You call them slanty-eyed bastards. That's how you get soldiers to kill them. And the Germans were not called people. They were called krauts, for sauerkraut. How many of you do that? So if they wanted you to hate Germans, they show Germans raping a woman. Show Japanese doing the same thing. Why do the Japanese invade other countries? I looked into it. I found out that their religion teaches them that they were put here by God to rule the world. How many of you knew that? So they're just carrying out what they've been taught. Are they bad? No. Nobody is good or bad. I'm trying to tell you that. But when they say we're going to war with that other country, why? To bring democracy. Well, that's a hell of a way to bring democracy, with cannons and bombs. And also when you go to war, you kill so many people, you develop hatred. You understand? Hatred over the years. They hate you for what you've done. So Truman dropped a bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Hiroshima first and then Nagasaki. He said, we'll show those slanty-eyed bastards. See, he was also a victim of culture. Most people are victims of the culture they're brought up with. You're not supposed to be patriotic. Einstein said patriotism is a disease. It separates nations. You've got to understand that the real growth of a nation is sharing ideas. If you share your ideas with other nations, you enable them to grow. If you don't share them, you keep them where they're at. So we must understand there's no such thing as a bad race. A Jewish race, a Polish race, or a Greek race. They're all people, and people can learn to build airplanes. There's no Japanese way to build a ship. There's an engineering way. You understand that? There's no Jewish way to put up a building. There's an architectural way. And that's what people have to study, to put up buildings, the architectural way. If you want to become a doctor, you go to a medical environment, if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, you don't become a doctor. That's not a democracy. So, in order for you to understand this whole system better, I think Roxanne will take you on a tour to show you what we do here. How many of you would like to see what we do here? Okay. So you go on a tour, when you come back, I'll take questions. I'll see what we can do. Roxanne, would you mind?
Sure. Jacque will go over more things when we get back. grounds and fixes the buildings to location. But we moved here and there was nothing on the land. There was no water, no trees. This was actually a flat tomato field. And we put in the water and a lot of the trees and a lot of the palm trees that aren't indigenous to this area. We wanted to get an island in the Caribbean, but we couldn't afford it, so we tried to make this look like a tropical island. So we came here to build and experiment with different building processes. But we couldn't build what we wanted to build. We built just what we could afford to build, because we didn't take out any mortgages or borrow any money. We never had any backers. So we worked on the outside to get the money. Jacque lectured and we sold his books, and I had an architectural model and rendering business. But that went by the way of the mortgage crisis, like everything else. So this is a building we put up, and I did the concrete work. Jacque designed it. The cabinets were, you know, if we had the funding, they would come down. He did the trend home after World War II. It was I don't know if anybody knows about it. It was a house made out of aluminum. And it was the first house with complex extrusions. I'll show you what they are if you want to know later in one of the other buildings. And you know, he designed this, and I think it was Frank Lloyd Wright's son or somebody who worked for him came along and said, "Oh, that will never work. The extrusions are way too complicated." And so the guys who were backing him got together and said, "Well, do you want to continue doing this?" And they said yes. They really believed in what Jacque was doing. And so after it was all done and all put together and worked beautifully, the head of Paramount really liked it, and he put it on display in Paramount movie studio. And they collected something like a few dollars, and they had thousands, 40,000 people look at it. And they gave the money to the cancer fund. And this guy comes back and says, "Well, congratulations, this really worked well." And Jacque said, "Fuck you, you know. You never say it can't work. Ask, you know, how do you do it? But don't try and wipe it out before it starts." So anyway, what I was getting at, it was in that home too. He had the cabinets coming down like that and go back up back then. These would be, instead of these hanging in, we would have chairs that pull out here or slide out. So in the future, well, I'll talk about that when I go up and show you these models, but there'd be kitchen units that would plug into a house. And this building is, the domes they're not because Jacque likes domes or, you know, because the Flintstones or somebody influenced them. What was that cartoon? A lot of people.
The Jetsons.
The Jetsons. Yeah, Jacque never saw that. Maybe they took it from Jacque's work. But yeah, it's because an arch is the strongest shape, and this essentially are arches all around. And this is about as hurricane-proof as you can get. It's made out of concrete and steel, and it's like a ferro-cement boat. There's a lot of steel in it, layers of steel and concrete. So you use the least amount of material to cover the most space. And you know, the environmentalists want to live and don't want you to cut down the forest, but they live in wooden houses. So here you don't cut down the forest. You don't have to worry about fire insurance. You don't have to put that bag over it, you know, the tent, and then spray poisons in it to get rid of termites, because the termites would break their bones on, break their teeth on this stuff. So, you know, this is why we design this way, because we live in hurricane country, and we don't worry about it. When they say leave to a hurricane shelter, we come to the houses here and stay. So, and so do the neighbors. They consider it the hurricane shelter of Venus. But, so, considering that we built what we could afford to build, this, you know, we wouldn't have done it by hand. It would have all come off a mold, with the furniture all molded in. You know, there'd be some free pieces. But this is the way that you build if you really want to house, feed, and clothe everybody all over the world. Jacque just doesn't talk about, you know, how nice things would be in the future, but he also technically designs it to back it up. So, you know, Jimmy Carter's really nice guy, but you're not going to eliminate homelessness through Habitat for Humanity, where everybody's putting up their own building with hammer and nails. It's a feel-good organization, and it doesn't solve the problems. So I'll show you some more examples of quick housing when we get to one of the model buildings. So we had this building. If anybody wants to use the bathroom, you can use it here too.
I had a question though. None of these windows open out, do they?
The door's open. With things. I wouldn't want to do it again with Chattanooga, but we experimented with different things. So I don't know if anybody wants to use the bathroom here. No. They have a big long line. Yeah. So it was originally this one building. The zoning board essentially let us do what we wanted to do here. They were really, when we first moved, we brought, I did the blueprints for 2 buildings. I said, Jacque, 2 buildings, what are we going to do with 2 buildings? And now we have 10 and we don't have enough space because we're really doing a lot of things. They're all small because that's all we could afford. But so we took the 2 buildings, I did the blueprints for them because the engineers and the architects couldn't draw domes. And I did all that work and brought them up there and they checked it all out and they came to look and see what we were doing. And then I did that for the next 3 buildings and I didn't even open the blueprints. They said, look, you overbuild, we're here to protect people, do what you want. And when the electric company comes to get the permits, send them over to us, which is very unusual. And so that's what we did. We just went ahead and did 10 more buildings. But since then, we've gotten them permitted, because at one time we thought we'd have to sell. So we had to go back and get them permitted. But so we had to, when we went and got them permitted, we had to add this bedroom. This was the hall closed in, and then we had to add more space, because it wasn't big enough for a house.
What do you do for lighting?
Well, we have different light. We didn't build with the lighting in. We would have. There's a lot of things we didn't do. Jacque has a lot of, we have individual lamps and things, but Jacque has a lot of designs where he would have, the light pipe that he showed you, you can put it up to the sun and you can bring light in through that, and there's no cost that way per se, the electric bills. Or you can, and he never really finished with the light pipe showing you things. That's why I asked him to do that. Jacque also had a lot of things he wanted to do with the houses. He had, you know how they have dissimilar metals, and when you touch one end, it gets very hot, and the junction gets almost ice cold, depending on how hot it is. He wanted to put that in the roof, so the hotter it gets on the outside, the cooler it gets automatically on the inside. We also wanted to have piping on the outside and the black heat, you know, in the patio and then under the slab, and we just couldn't afford to do a lot of things.
What's the name of that thing you just said, the 2 metals, the hot and cold?
Oh,
Is
2
there a name?
dissimilar metals.
Dissimilar?
Yeah, they use it in, they use it in thermos, I think they use it in, I don't know, just like thermos buckets or something to keep them, you know, keep food cool or something. They're not using it for much. But if you want to come down here, you can just see what we were doing here. So we just added this room later, just to make it bigger for the zoning board. Because we had a bed that came down in the other room.
Someone lives in here?
Yeah, Larry lives in here. Here somewhere. Yeah. But we can go back to the model room. I'll show you that.
And then the
Yeah, we experimented with how we were doing. How we were doing.
Maybe you'll see something on the outside.
sharing new information.
Good. Let me see what I can get here.
Eventually came out and covered with magazines, and you saw a lot of different research centers coming up with things he devised, like in the 50s and things like that, and patent them then. But this is something that he came up with the quickest way to transport is on water. So you make these in dry dock. This is for a research center, and then the catamaran would take it, and the canal would be larger too. And with 1 pound of water, you can move things, a lot of weight, and so you can, with jets of water, you can move this right in place. And these are for canals outside, within Africa or something. You bring in the salt water, and this system carries this and lays it down, and you have desalinization. The water would evaporate and you have clean water. And he has other systems where you use laser. Reagan's time, he was talking about making weapons, laser weapons. Well, Jacque was converting that to make roadways and canals and use the lasers to shape the earth into any shape you want and actually harden the surface all at the same time. So these are old aircraft that he taught me how to do models on a long time ago, 3 to 5 years ago. But these are different aircraft designs. They're beginning to get to aircraft that are just spare today. This is a helicopter where the jets are on the outside and the middle stays stationary. And then it goes up and goes forward when it gets to a certain speed. These are different robotic systems that we use in filming to show automation. And these are systems for outer space, but Jacque doesn't believe in going into outer space until we learn how to live together on Earth. Because he feels sure as hell you'll be taking things, the military wasn't involved in every venture that we did going into outer space, and he believes that eventually, if we don't already, have nuclear weapons out there going around and saying, all you'd have to do is say, well, you better do what we want to do, or this nuclear weapon is heading your way. But he felt that we just are not wise enough to go out there, and we need to take care of things on Earth first and then go up as a joint venture with all the countries together. And he'd have something like this. You'd never go to the moon without having reinforcements out there. Send something like this where you'd have materials if you need them, if you got stranded somewhere, and had them out there. And these are different satellite stations and different grabbers that he used. These are different convention centers. And this is solar. And, well, this is similar to a dome that we have in the backland. We can go up there, walk up there. It used to be our house, but Joel has that now. But this is the double dome, and then he had designs for the tri-dome. And this is something similar to what the building is like, the domes, but there are thick tubes in here as well, and a lot of steel and concrete.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Like the airplanes where, he would fly with his technology that he knows, would that, like flying, say, from here to China or like a long flight, would that take much less time than what we have now?
Yeah, he had different designs for going faster with his aircraft too, but going much more efficiently. And his the way he banked the planes too, he doesn't cut into the structure. He had a system where you would collect kind of energy within the plane and put a probe. Like people are talking about building maglevs in tunnels. He feels that's very dangerous. If you get a fire in there with a vacuum-free tunnel, you have a lot of trouble. So he had a probe in front of his trains, and that would break the air in front. So there's no sonic boom. The same thing on his aircraft too. It breaks the sonic boom. If you go fast enough and you hit water, you would break your bones. The water doesn't have time to separate. So same with the air. When the plane is going that fast, there's a problem with the sonic boom. It actually, hits the air and makes a crashing noise. But if you split the air in front of you, as this probe would do, then you don't have those problems. You wouldn't have the problems with the tiles on the shuttle too coming in. That was because there was so much friction on against.
And that makes you go faster too.
Yeah, his processes do go faster too. But the problem with his airplanes, He made airplanes that went faster and more efficient, but the military would use them to bomb quicker.
Right.
He was the first one to make hip prosthesis and knee prosthesis, and he designed hundreds of devices for the medical field, but only the wealthy could use them, in this system. And then he worked with alcoholics and drug addicts and alcoholics and what they called juvenile delinquents back then. And for every kid that he got off drugs, and he kind of got he really wasn't concerned about just getting them off drugs. He would give them a social responsibility. That's what he cared how they thought, not really whether they drank or not. So he got them off drugs, but for everyone that he got off drugs, this system generated thousands more. So it was like a dying thing, you were up against something you couldn't buck. So he really decided it was the system itself that needed to be revised to produce different types of people.
Right.
Because people don't look at it like that. They think, well, you're inborn, you have greed and jealousy and envy, and that type of thinking goes along with this system. It keeps this system going. Because if you would think, well, there was something in the system that generated that behavior and we need to change that, it's a scapegoat, human behavior, instead of looking at the causes.
Right.
But anyway, these are bathrooms, and this one, these are for underdeveloped countries or the United States, which is very underdeveloped. So instead of, they tell people to conserve water, put a brick in your toilet or something, but instead he builds it into the system. For instance, the water would come out from the sink here in a line, like a ribbon, and that would cut, very strong, and that would cut the water off your hands and use less water. And then the excess water would be stored and saved within the shower walls. This is the shower. And that would be used to flush the toilet. So you build it in. You don't tell people to act a certain way. You build it in technically. And then we'd have maybe 25 different bathroom designs. And the corners are all faired. You can almost take a hose and wash it all off. No corners to crack. And then the kitchen would hang next to it, so you have the central plumbing all in one area. And same thing with kitchens. You'd have one complete unit, many different styles. And this is a building that uses the memory metal. If it sways or anything, the memory metal brings it back into shape, more so. And he's got all sorts of models. You don't just start here, an aircraft, and show kids you start here. You show kids how aircraft evolved. So you don't just wipe them out. A lot of kids think, well, they try a few things and then they stop because they don't have it. But everybody has it if you're taught well, and if you're shown that learning and inventing is serially developed too. And like who is it, Dr. Salk or something? For syphilis, they called it the magic bullet. He tried 707 times to do an experiment before he had a success at something. So kids don't learn that. They think, oh, they try something a few times and they don't have it. So that's a shame. But anyway, this is another design for aircraft. He was really prolific with aircraft. He started designing in 3 dimensions. So he brought all that experience to other things that he designed, like bridges and automobiles and anything. And he really felt that the shark that was so slick and fair, and the shark was its physical body, the shark was around longer than most fish in the ocean, so it really worked well in the environment. And he took a lot from the shark, meaning the way things were fared together. And there's less wind resistant with that. This is the helicopter of today. The blades go this way, and then there's torque, which moves the body around this way. So then you have another blade here, pulling counteracting the torque that you had. So you kind of go around like this, and then they have a lot of computers and electronics in it to keep it going straight. But Jacque's helicopter, the middle stays stationary, and the blades go around, and then the jets are out here. And to compensate for the torque, you know, the bee, they said the bee would never fly physically. Nobody, you know, they said nobody told the bee that. But the bee has two little pendulums that move very, very fast to keep it steady. And this was also based on that too. Has that mechanism in there.
Has he been able to commercialize that?
Some of his designs, a lot of his, he worked for Northrop and for the Army and did a lot of aircraft designs. He did, you can take this off, but when they put him on the firing range to see who's going to go abroad, he missed like by so much purposely, but they put him so he didn't get to become cannon fodder, right. You know. But they put him in design and development. And he designed a lot of he said, I can't do weapons. You know, he said, I couldn't do it. You know, not because morally, he just, I don't know how to do it, but I can make safety devices for aircraft. So he did a lot of things for the Army, designing aircraft and designing different type of wing structures and designing how the doors would come down with the stairs in it, and designing on the skids for medical purposes to put the injured people there. He designed all that apparatus. He was so prolific when he went to work for Northrop that the person who hired him said, they just left him alone. He got to walk around the plant to see how things were designed, and they gave him a desk to do whatever he wanted. And about 3 weeks later, the guy said, you've given us more for aircraft design than the history of aircraft within 3 weeks. He was always designing since he was really young. He started in airplanes because he was so amazed. You know, 97 years ago when they first had aircraft, you'd see this little thing in the sky, this little dot, and all the kids would go out and look at it with their mouths open. So he just had all this interference to get to the airplane and finally see it. And he would be building little aircraft. And he actually built a full-length aircraft, I think it was about 12 or something, on the rooftop in Brooklyn, but he didn't have enough money on time to get the varnish on there, and it rained, and that was the end of that.
But you're an artist also, and aren't you involved in some of these renderings that we're looking at here?
Doing some of the artwork? Yeah, I did some of the artwork. But I was an artist, which equips you for absolutely nothing. So when I met Jacque, he taught me technical illustration and the science behind art, which enables anybody to be an artist, but even draw better. Artists draw and they just keep doing the same things, and they don't know how to technically do it. Nobody's shown them. I went to very good art schools, but two of them and graduated, but I didn't know what a vanishing point was when I graduated, which is the basis behind drawing. And then the architects think, oh, what they do is cold and hard, and they know how to draw much better than artists, but they don't know how to convert that to drawing anything. And there's a science behind art, and which makes it really interesting so anybody can do it if you know how to teach it. So Jacque taught me, and he taught me on some of these models too, how to do it. And then I went and took it into a business. I did architectural renderings and models.
Oh, they're really
before
nice.
CAD systems. But so that's what helped finance a place too. Yeah.
I have two questions. I'm not really sure how to structure the first one, but it relates back to Egyptian technology, if you will.
Egyptian technology?
Yes. When you were showing us this model here, using the water to move things, it really reminded me of what we're finding out now about how Egyptians did things and their abilities and stuff. And then I looked down on one of your shelves, and sure enough, there's like an Egyptian pharaoh there sitting there. So I'm wondering if there's any relation, I guess, that correlate Jacque's ability to kind of understand how to move large things and stuff like that. If he's done any research back.
He did a lot of research back on how they move things. A lot of people think it was mysterious, but they also had a lot of slaves by warfare. And these monuments that were supposed to be such great monuments to human wisdom were huge monuments built by slaves to people's personal egos.
Right. I
understand
that.
And there were processes that they had at the time by taking rope and wetting it and shrinking it and having things moved.
Right, they were
Yeah.
still doing things in very fast time,
But
regardless of how many
you
swings
look
they
at
were
the buildings
using.
today, and they're much more advanced than buildings back then. They think it's so mysterious and
Right.
so much wisdom, but we have much more ability to do things today that far exceeds the ancient
Right.
mysteries that they think are
I
mysteries.
can understand that. And then
Yeah.
I guess my second question relates to these circular landscapes. They obviously remind me of geometry a lot. And so I'm wondering the purpose and his intent in having everything in a circular these communities.
Because it's the quickest way to get around. Today, you live in a suburb and you might travel
Right.
45 minutes to get to
the
your
other
work.
side.
And then you have to go to the dentist and you go to another hour
Yeah.
in that direction. And then you go to your kid's school, which is another 20 minutes in that direction. And that's great for the
Right.
oil company. But it's not too good if you want to conserve the earth
Yeah.
and have a very high standard of living for everyone. If you
Right.
want to conserve energy.
Okay.
So if you might have housing out here, and even in the future, we feel that people wouldn't have individual housing, that they'd probably live in a high rises and apartments where, that's soundproof and you have everything in there. You
Yeah.
have all your entertainment and your medical care right
Like
there.
we
and
do in
It's
some
much more
places now,
efficient.
yes.
Yeah, and exercise. But say if you lived here, you might work in biology or botany and so it's the least amount of travel.
Right.
You go here. You don't have to.
Right.
And then in the center here, or over here, you have access centers to anything you want. There's no money. Because if you make things abundant to people, there's no need for money.
Of course.
Money's an interference factor between what you want and what you can get.
Right, it's an instillment of lack of power, right. So I guess that leads to a third question. There's a lot of talk of...
I just want to mention
yes.
too, you design 1/8 of the city and you duplicate it. Today, they're prefabricated, like you'd have similar windows in different buildings. Today, it's chaos, the cities. They're very stress producing, they're very wasteful, they're very polluting the cities. They're a terrible place to live. And they're really high energy consuming in cities. So if the very first thing we would do is build a city that's efficient and work within that city to make the next city even more efficient and better, progressively. So you build 1/8 of the city and then you duplicate it. Today you have architects that are each working in different buildings.
Yeah.
They're monuments to their ego as well, the architects. But it's very different the way you construct today in a monetary system and the way you construct considering saving resources, having it energy efficient, using the least amount of miles to go in a direction that you use every day. And you design the whole city and you immerse it in beautiful gardens. It's not like you have to go to a park, the city would be a park.
Right, I understand. I guess my third question would go to, we talk about pollution and lack of efficiency and stuff. And then there's a lot of, buildings that are trying to become biodegradable and sustainable in that sense. So I'm wondering how in the event the people have to move for whatever reason, the water levels rise and such, maybe, and people escape or leave. What happens to these buildings, these structures, and how do they
The buildings
affect
are
that?
designed to go together and to be dismantled as well. And when you have new things in it, like you have new monitors and things, you pull it out, put in an updated system. Or, if you
So it's
repair
modular
something,
in that sense.
It could be in that sense.
So-
And you'd use it. It's just like nature. Everything would be recycled.
So this is steel, it's hard to move, it's laid with concrete, like you said, and I'm assuming these domes are as well.
Some of them. There's
Okay.
all sorts of building processes.
Okay, because when I originally saw
But we
these
live in
designs,
hurricane. We live in hurricane
country.
system.
But when I originally
It's
saw these
just
designs, I was
hurricane.
thinking it was a certain type of metal.
We do have metal, and the metal is very recyclable.
Right,
Yeah.
and modular in a sense to take apart and...
There's somebody who had a question behind you.
My father, yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
You said that the city is divided up into 8 parts.
This particular one.
This
Jacque has
particular-
hundreds of different city designs.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that one section
Mimics,
takes
right.
the other.
duplicated, yes.
And the buildings seem very similar, and
This is conceptual. All his city designs, the buildings are very different. But in this one, yes, they would be similar as you go around.
where's the individuality? I mean, it looks all the same. I mean, where does one become an individual
We're all
Need
one
when
now,
everything's the same?
but we're all one.
Who needs individuality?
You know, what
I mean,
you think
inside,
is an
maybe.
individual, they teach you every word you say, mama, papa, daddy. You go to school and they say, who's the greatest in the country? Your president is the greatest. Who loves you more than anyone? I don't know, mama, papa. And they pump all that stuff in your head. Pledge allegiance to the flag. What flag? You don't even know what you're saying, but you're reciting it. You know, you don't learn till many, many years later. You think about what you're saying, and it's awful. They're priming you for war. You go to your football games, and you become very competitive. All the values that they teach you, and then they say, recite after me. We are free. We are individuals. It's a concept that is totally erroneous because you gain your values from the books you read, from the schools you go to, from your teachers, your role models, your subcultures, and then you think you're an individual. You know, you might be more of an individual if you've traveled to many different countries and you've seen many different values and you lived with the different people. You might have more of a range of different associations in your head. But that concept it helps feed egos. You know, I come back to this thing of egos, and it does. And it's very good for the monetary system, as long as it keeps you separated.
So you're saying that everyone should have the same values?
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
It depends on what you're interested in.
Well,
Everybody would be similar in this way. They wouldn't want to cut down the forest. They wouldn't want to hurt people. They would understand how to be cooperative and how people acquired their beliefs and behaviors so they wouldn't get angry at them. They would be similar in that way.
well, I
But they would
understand that,
have-
but
do you think
some
that-
people like blue and some people like red.
Oh, but you can still
They can pick
you can
the
still
inside.
pick those. Like if this was my house and you lived here, I could still have my house blue and you could have it red if you
Well, I
wanted.
didn't, I
No, but
I
instead of that, what we
everything looks
do-
so similar.
We have a beaded kind of paint on the inside of the building, and you can arrange the spectrum so you can change your colors. Some days when you want to have blue, sometimes you might have a red room, you can do
Well,
that
that's
as
right,
well.
yeah.
So you can, we're not forcing anything down you, but, you know, people think that they're individuals because they can pick the clothes that they want. Yet what they see, you're bombarded with marketing tools every day, and they work very well, otherwise they wouldn't do it. And, you know, they tell you this week, this month for the women, you have to have blue, and then the next 2 months you need red and yellow. And if you don't have that, you're looked down upon for those who respect that type of thing. But if you didn't do that, you couldn't continuously sell things. It's a marketing ploy. And in the future, you would have people who design clothes would design them kind of ergonomically so that it would breathe, it would move when you move, it wouldn't stretch, or, you know what I mean? So you wouldn't be artist. It wouldn't be an artist who designs it. It would be somebody who understands materials and how they move and how the body works when you sit, you know, where the stretches and the stresses are. We wouldn't force it on you. If you want the other, you can, but people would think, you know, today they might admire you, and then in the future they would feel sorry for you.
Well, they teach us individuality, but what is it really? Like Jacque said, it's a very fixed system. So you're really not individual. They just trying to, you know, they just trying to make you feel or think that you are individual. Exactly.
It separates us.
It separates us.
It separates us.
What really we need is
Does the
togetherness.
experience make you an individual? What about the
It gives you a broader range of behavior, but experience doesn't enable you to pick what's significant. You can have like people say, well, what if you're born with a better brain? You can be born with a really good, healthy brain, but you can learn how to be a fascist better, quicker, and be able to spread it faster. You know what I mean? It doesn't give you a value system as to what's significant. So, let's go on to the city here. Okay, here's a car that Jacque designed like 60, 70 years ago. Remember, Jacque's 97. He was designing since he was 13 and before. The first thing he designed was a fan. He saw his relative, his cousin, stick his finger in a metal fan. They had metal fans, and it got cut off. So, you know, he learned early how to become a problem solver and not just weep about it and become emotional and have feelings. But I want to go over that a bit, because people think that feelings is the highest state of some kind of, you know, if you have feelings about different things. But in the future, like if you see, if you're a mother and you have a car accident and you see your kids in the car and the thing is burning and there's fire and there's gas all over, you could sit and weep and have all these emotions. But we want people to take their emotions and convert them into an action pattern, meaning they pick up a log, break the window, and pull their kids out, instead of having emotions, you know? And in the future, if there is a car accident, the engineer comes along and designs cars that don't wear out, don't break down, and don't have accidents. To me, they call it cold science, but that's the warmest type of background you can have to be able to solve problems, yes. Convert the emotions into something that's helpful for all of humanity. And I don't mean that for making money and making a buck faster and getting a buck over somebody else and becoming a vulture over somebody else. That's prostitution of science and prostitution of engineering. When you use it for the betterhood of all humanity and the protection of the environment, that's real science.
If you get stuck in the emotion, then you really have a problem. Because then you'll be drug
It's
addict,
an endless loop that goes nowhere.
Or something.
And when you're given backgrounds and the values of today's values and religious background and religious values, you are in such loops that you can't work your way out of problems. In the future, we'd be training kids so they have a vast variety of understanding on many different levels, and especially problem solvers. We would want everybody, all kids, to be problem solvers in many different areas. Not to go to war and march, you know, with somebody telling you what to do. You don't know what you're going to war for today. They give you words that you're going to war for today with, like we're individuals, we're free, we honor, you know, all these, the evildoers, all these things that enable people. If you taught them how to think and you taught them how to be problem solvers, they would say, well, what are we going to war for? What did they do? You know, you'd ask questions that they don't today.
And even if I could add how they kind of make it seem like a utopian society is something that's completely a dream world, could never be a reality. But I feel like that's the reason why it isn't reality, because we're sold the dream that it's a dream world, you know what I mean? But the reality is it could be.
You could say that about anything that's new. Exactly. They would say that about people who wanted to fly. You know, if you look up the history of an invention, they would always call them ridiculous dreamers.
Right.
And those people that say that are the ones that will not do it, will not make it happen.
Has he designed flying cars? Because NASA, one of the NASA guys has said that we had technology to be able to build flying cars since 1974.
Yeah, we had a lot of technology. Jacque always says we could have done this in 1976 when we started mass production a great deal. No, I've never seen him work on flying cars. I don't think he thought that was too efficient or needed. But this was his early car, where the bumper was all around. He was the first one to advocate what do you call that?
Wraparound bumper.
No, not the bumper, but the
Aerodynamic?
No, the airbags. The airbags. But his airbag was different. It was all throughout the car. So you don't just hit in the front and back when the airbags came out. I know they have it on the sides today. But his airbag was all around. So there's a designer a long time ago that looked at Jacque's design and said, "You have no inhibition, do you?" Because today, when they design, they put a little indent here and a little fin here, you know, a little design here to make it fit in and be arty or whatever. But if you really want to go efficiently and use a car, this is, you know how you can't break an egg? This is a very efficient, strong structure, plus it's aerodynamic. It's more aerodynamic than any shape that they have today with automobiles, which means there's less wind resistance and means you use less energy, whatever the energy might be, you know, electric or automobile, yeah, fuels. So these are different aircraft designs, and this is what he shows kids, that in the future cars won't hit at all, you know.
So the plan
Won't be
to
able
not
to.
use oil or
No, no oil, no. There's so many other systems of energy that you don't need it. The geothermal people that work in that field say that we have enough geothermal energy to propel the entire Earth for the next 4,000 years. That's geothermal alone. And you have wave power, wind power, you know, all sorts of different systems, solar. But these are domes where you don't have to live in the city if you want to live in domes. The bottom is transparent, so it's really lovely. And if there's any kind of threat, you can tow these ashore and stack them on a post. And then here's the city, just conceptually. Out here is golf courses for those who want golf courses. Of course, we don't believe in golf courses. Life is hard enough than taking a ball. You know, we've gone through all stages of evolution to be able to take a ball and then hit it into a little cup and then set up interferences in order to get there. You know, life is hard enough. Why deal with that? But anyhow, so here's your clubhouse. You go to your clubhouse, you check out the finest clubs there are, the finest that can be made, because you don't want things to wear out and break down, because you don't want to have to, there's no selling of anything. So it works against you. Today, you want things to wear out and break down, so the market is continuous, which is tremendously wasteful, and as I said, the prostitution of science, the corruption of science. It is not science, really, you know. Somebody is using and abusing you for that. So anyhow, you don't own anything. You use everything, and everything is available for you. So when you're finished, you bring it back to the clubhouse. You don't have to drag it. Have you ever seen these guys drag their clubs on the airplanes and then carry them all over, and then store them, and then update them, and then have insurance on them, and then have bars on your windows so nobody will steal them? You know, this is really insane. So here's the outer ring is all recreation too. And then you have indoor and outdoor agriculture. And the roads actually would be black, and you generate electricity through that. And you heat the buildings as well. And the top here, you'd also have surfaces for generating electricity. And then your massive housing here, and like I said, it's all conceptual, the shapes would change. And then your recreation belt here, and restaurants, and as I said, your housing. And what we built here is kind of like what the outskirts of the city could be like, but made with resources instead of less resources. So when you're in one house, there's so many trees and waterways that you don't see another house, although it might be systematically laid out, but it doesn't even look like that on the ground until you fly and you see how it's all laid out systematically. And then here's where, your research centers. This might be on agriculture, this might be on education, this might be, behavioral sciences. And then your access centers over here. So you have the transportation, you have transportation, for your monorail would go from city to city and right through the main dome it might go, and then out to the next city. And then you have radio transportation, and it goes up and down. We'll show you a little video when we get back to. So your main dome would have the whole computer system for the core and the medical system and other things that you need. So let's go on to the other building. We've still got more to see. Well, you know, when I the things that he made to have the airplanes move and the models move and everything like that. And we spent probably about 20 years doing all this. It was before computer animation. Of course, it's much easier now. But we bought, this is something that we bought from NASA to make it turn very smooth and very, very slow. And then we'd put the round city on here. We'd put a helicopter here. We'd put a fan under the helicopter, and then the blades would turn. And so the helicopter's mounted and the city is moving, and it looked like the helicopter's moving. Jacque also used to do special effects for Hollywood, among other things. I don't know what he didn't work at. But this was another set that we had at one time that we were using to show the reclamation of the environment, but it's cracking and things. So now we have people who volunteer their time, and they take Jacque's, literally, we've been archiving all of Jacque's work, and we have archived his sketches, which are, a lot of details. When he designs something, it's not an artistic rendition. He designs how it goes together, how the nuts and bolts would go together if it's made that way, how it would snap together. And he also considers the factories of how to make them, too. So when you're looking at this, these are not just conceptual drawings. He's really prolific in a lot of things. So we'll go on. And they pulled the trees over so it looked interesting and put palm trees and tried to make the water look natural. And when we had the locals dig it, they would just do squares. They knew nothing other than squares. So we'd have to take paint cans and paint the shape.
How many domes do you say are in this area? 11 or something?
No, we have 10 buildings, but I don't know how many domes we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I guess we have 4 domes. We have a lot of wild orange trees too. We dug up a lot of them, but now there's some kind of canker sore or something. Canker disease that they're getting. We lost a lot of our oranges. This was aluminum and fiberglass. And then we had foam sprayed on the outside for insulation. I think I'll mention that. We experimented with a lot of building processes here. So this little building here is Jacque's video dome. When the building we were just in, he would shoot in there, and he had so many models that, we had to build something else to bring the models into. And by the time we built this, he had filled this one too. So, he made all these by hand while I was busy making models for work and for money to support the place. But this one we experimented with aluminum tubing and aluminum expanded wire mesh and fiberglass. And this one has foam on the outside to insulate it. We thought it was nice, so we didn't want to cover it. We thought it was interesting. Yeah. So, you can see how strong it is, all this bracing, and there's metal, aluminum in between it.
How long have these been done?
We started building in 1980. So,
30-something years.
yeah. Of course, this isn't the way you build. This was hand tooled. You'd make a mold, pull it off, as I mentioned. Yeah. So there wouldn't be just domes. There'd be a lot of other shapes too. But these shapes are very strong, and they're made to be pulled off a mold and not hand tooled. So that's. And we'll give you a demonstration as to why Jacque's buildings are curved. It's not because he likes curved things. We'll show you a demonstration when we get back of what that means, how much stronger something is when it's curved. So this is the one I always wanted to build, but we couldn't afford to build. But anyway, this is a nice picture if you frame it right in here. So, if Jacque was only an architect, he'd be extremely prolific, even just as an architect, but he's not. So this is actually a monorail that Jacque was designing for Dubai. When we visited there, they had no mass transportation, and they were building just like New York. They took this new place and they built a whole city within 10 years or so, but they were doing all the same problems. They had no transportation. The only way you could put the transportation was like in the middle of the road, so this was designed for that. And the buildings were right close to the road, and So this was the only real true monorail because it rides on one rail while the other one on the other side was riding in another direction.
Because he knows he's way ahead of his time.
No, the times are behind him.
She was ready for that question. Did Dubai accept the design?
No, but they wanted us, Jacque was on Discovery Channel for 5 minutes once, many years ago, and somebody from Dubai called us over. And they sent somebody first to check us out, and the guy really liked it, and they gave us high reviews. And so they sent us out immediately, and they picked us up in this big limousine with liquor in it. You know, they're not supposed to have liquor or anything. And we stayed about 10 days. And when we came back, they negotiated for a city, for a research center, and a theme park. And we negotiated a long time, but it fell apart. The people we went over to see who were kind of sponsoring us ended up, the person who sent us over was kind of working on both ends. He was helping us, he was helping them. But he said, you know, you really should split. He's giving you a hard time, and they're giving everybody a hard time. And they were actually